Okay, welcome. Today's topic is prosody. Something with poetry, meter, and don't take it as a technical topic. It would be enjoyable. So, what is prosody? Prosody is called the grammar of words, poetry. How you make a poetic line with meter and making a poem, and that is prosody, or the laws that govern the structure of poetic lines. And at the center of prosody is meter, or Anapestic, or Dactylic, or something else. Today we will look into these meters and how they function. So first of all, what is meter? When you say meter, it's kind of a rhythmical pattern or kind of a sound pattern, and this pattern is formed by the arrangement of syllables. How you arrange syllables, and that syllable gives you kind of an internal rhythm as well as kind of a musical quality to that to a poem, and that is meter. And generally we have three types. Number one is syllabic. This meter is entirely based on the number of syllables. It doesn't bother about whether it is stressed or unstressed. And the famous example is haiku, the Japanese poetic form. And in this form, you have to use only 17 syllables, and with which you have to construct a poem. Write a poem. And those syllables have to be arranged in three lines. And the first line should be of 5 syllables, second 7 syllables, third 5 syllables again. So just look at this haiku by the Japanese master Basho, the old pond. There is the old pond. Lo, into it jumps a frog. Hark, water is music. Okay, it simply describes a frog jumping into a calm water, and by jumping into it, it makes a splash. It's more imagistic. And by the way, Ezra Pound, the imagist poet, the American imagist poet, was inspired by haiku and Japanese poetry and Japanese writing. And Basho, he inspired many, and one among them was Ezra Pound. So in this poem, if you look at it, the first line has 5 syllables. There is the old pond. Second line, you have low, then into, 2 syllables there. Then it jumps a frog. So totally you have 7 syllables. Then hark is 1 syllable, water 2 syllable, music 2 syllable. So totally 5. So totally 17 syllables haiku. So Basho. So if you are not aware of Basho, maybe you can check it out. When it comes to haiku, he is the master, or he was the master, and his famous collection, The Narrow Road into the Deep North. There was his famous collection of poems, The Narrow Road into the Deep North. And many are inspired by the title itself, The Narrow Road into the Deep North. And even recently, an American novelist took that as a title for his novel, The Narrow Road into the Deep North, by the Australian novelist Richard Flanagan, Flanagan, Richard Flanagan. You can check him out, because that novel won Booker Prize somewhere in 2014 or 15. Check that out. The name of the novel, also the title of Basho's poetry, is one and the same. The Narrow Road into the Deep North, by Richard Flanagan and also by Basho. The next meter depends only on, it doesn't about only the stressed syllables. Only that gives a kind of a rhythm, especially in nursery rhymes. For instance, ding dong bell, pussy's at the well. All the syllables, it's a kind of only the stress count. Don't bother about the number of syllables here, because each and every word is more of a stressed word. Ding dong bell. It is the beauty of nursery rhymes. That's why we love nursery rhymes. And the sound quality has something to do with the memory. Uh, this sound quality gives, helps us to memorize those lines, and it stays in our memory forever. So that is Accentual meter. It is based only on stressed ones, stressed syllables. The next one is a mixed one. Here we count the number of syllables as well as the stressed one. Example, you have a iambic pentameter. We will look into iambic pentameter in detail in a few minutes. But what is accentual syllabic? First, you count the number of syllables. So here we have a famous line. I hope you can immediately identify this line. Was this the phase that launched 1,000 ships? Yes. This line is from, we have already discussed.
Faustus, sir, Dr. Faustus.
Dr. Faustus.
Yes, Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. And of course, it refers to Helen of Troy.
Helen of Troy.
And, yes, and figure of speech. Was this the phase that launched?
Hyperbole.
Yes, good.
Hyperbole.
Hyperbole or hyperbole. And it's also a kind of a rhetoric question. We know the answer. It is Helen of Troy. Fine. So if you look at this line, there is kind of a rhythm to it. And if you count, if you're able to count, I have given the line, there are 10 syllables. Was this the phase that launched? Here the launched is only one word because the E, L-A-N-C-H-E-D, that E is cut off. So that the syllable will be only 10 syllables, not 11 syllables. That's a technique actually, which we will discuss later. Then 1,000 ships. So totally 10 syllables. And the arrangement, the first syllable is unstressed. Was this the phase that launched 1,000 ships? So there's a kind of a rhythm to it. Unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed, unstressed. So that is the pattern. So you have 5 pairs of unstressed, stressed syllables, totally 10 syllables. This is a combination of the earlier two. Here we take the syllables into account and also the combination of stressed and unstressed syllables. Okay, so this is accentual syllabic, and this is the characteristic feature of English poetry. Maybe if there is a question, they will ask what is the characteristic feature of English poetry when it comes to meter. That is accentual syllabic. We count these two. Okay, so we move from here. So there are 3 types of meter. Basically, you have a syllabic, accentual, and accentual syllabic. So when you think of syllabic, think of Basho and Haiku, and also think of Ezra Pound, because most of the imagist poems by Ezra Pound or William Carlos Williams, Ezra Pound famous poem In a Station of a Metro, In a Station of a Metro by Ezra Pound, or William Carlos Williams, yesterday we saw him, The Wheelbarrow, his famous poem, The Wheelbarrow. The poem, they use only few number of syllables, and with which they create an image. They try to convey abstract idea through concrete images. That is imagism, and they were inspired from this one, haiku. Accentual, when you think of accentual, of course you can think of nursery rhymes, but you can also think of G.M. Hopkins, the priest poet G.M. Hopkins. Can anyone tell one of his poems? G.M. Hopkins.
Pied Beauty.
Oh yes, Pied Beauty, P-I-E-D, Beauty, Pied Beauty, and The Wind Hover. And The Wind Hover also has a subtitle. You can check it out. That was considered as one of his famous poems. The Wind Hover, H-O-V-E-R, hover. It refers to a falcon or kind of an eagle. The Wind Hover, to Christ our Lord. So that was a subtitle to that poem. And what is the rhythm he uses? G.M. Hopkins.
Sprung rhythm.
Yes, that sprung rhythm is based on accentual syllabic, meter. Because sprung rhythm, it springs from stressed syllable to another stressed syllable, stressed syllable to another stressed syllable, like ding dong bell. It jumps from, it is springing means jumping. It is springing from one stressed syllable to the another stressed syllable. And G.M. Hopkins was inspired by this, these nursery rhymes, and he employed it in his poems. And he said that is natural to English poetry, according to him. So when you think of G.M. Hopkins, Pied Beauty, or Wind Hover, also think of a sprung rhythm, and that rhythm is based on this accentual meter. Then accentual syllabic is very famous because that is there is an intrinsic feature of English poetry. Generally, you go for iambic pentameter, and this very line, when you read it, was this the phase that launched 1,000 ships? and there's a rhythm, internal rhythm to it, and the rhythm is constructed because it is kind of an alternate one, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. So that's the one that gives us the beauty. Okay, so with which we will go to the next one. Okay, so if you consider, the syllabic meter is generally, is a feature of French poetry. When you say French poetry, it is syllabic. They go for number of syllables. When it comes to Germanic languages, Germanic language also include English, but Germanic language is more accentual, sound, that stressed is one. Then English poetry, the predominant meter is accentual syllabic. I mean, stress and syllable both are taken into account, and the recurring pattern gives the rhythm. So you can, so far, just remember syllabic, accentual, and accentual syllabic. The first one is more on number of syllables. Second one, only stressed syllables. Third one, number of syllables plus stressed one. We are moving into English poetry. So before we move into that, there's something called measure or foot. What is this measure? It's kind of a measurement or a foot. It's a combination of stressed syllables and unstressed syllables. Simply put, like we saw, was the surface that launched the 1,000 ships. There is a kind of a combination. When you arrange the syllables, stressed and unstressed syllable, this combination we call measure, okay, or foot. So there are different types of measures. Generally, 4 predominant measures. First 2 are these, and they are disyllabic. It means only 2 syllables. Number 1 is iambic. If you look at iambic, the first syllable is unstressed, second is stressed. So if you say prefer, we say prefer, the first syllable pre is kind of unstressed, and fur, last one. So prefer, and the second syllable is stressed. So remember this, iambic, you are starting with unstressed and it is followed by a stressed one. Trochaic is the reverse one, where you start with a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. Paper, paper. If you are, the most, when it comes to Indian English, most of us do not pronounce this diphthong sound. Diphthong in the sense of 2 vowels coming together, like a cow, ow. Ow is, a diphthong. Here, a, paper. But we pronounce it as paper. Or instead of saying make, M-A-K-E, make, we say make. Or T-A-K-E, take, we say take. So we hardly pronounce, when it comes, Indians, we hardly pronounce diphthongs. But if we pronounce diphthongs, I think our way of speaking English will be entirely different. So here we say paper or make or take. That gives some beauty to English. So here is an example. So paper. So the first syllable is stressed, second is unstressed. So just to remember this, they are disyllabic measures. That means only 2 syllables. First one unstressed, stressed for iambic, stressed and unstressed for trochaic. And comes the next set, trisyllabic. Here we go for 3. 3 syllables, and the first 2 are so famous. And when it comes to English poetry, the last one is hardly used. But anyway, first one, tactylic. Tactylic is an extension of a trochaic. You have a stressed syllable followed by 2 unstressed syllable. For instance, rarity. Rarity. The ra is stressed. The next 2 syllables, they are not stressed much. Rarity. Whereas anapestic is the reverse of tactylic. 2 unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. For instance, repartee. Repartee, and the te are like a referee, referee, free, last syllable is stressed. Here, repartee, the last syllable is stressed. It is anapestic. By the way, repartee itself is a kind of a technical term used in drama. Can someone tell me how it is a technical term? Repartee, something with drama. Anyone? Maybe I can give you a clue. It is you can think of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. There's a play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead by Tom Stoppard. in which the characters speak single lines very fast again and again. You know, that kind of a technique is called repartee. Repartee in the sense you speak back, fast, alternate lines, single alternate lines. You exchange it fast and fast. The characters throw one line, you throw another line. The two characters against each other. That kind of speech is called repartee. It also has something called technically stichomythia, which we will look into later. Stichomythia, that's a proper technical name, but simple name it's repartee. You can check it out later. Okay, then Ambi Break. The name itself says when you say ambi, it means a two. So it is surrounded by two, flanked by two stressed syllables. Tomorrow, the middle syllable takes the stress. Tomorrow. Okay. So you remember there's 5 measures, because the questions will come from these syllable, these measures. Last 2 years they have been asking from this. I don't know why suddenly they ask go for meter, because these days prosody is hardly taught at university or at colleges. Okay. Now I'm putting all together. Just memorize this. I'm giving it as a kind of a mnemonic, something that you can memorize. First one, iambic, unstressed, stressed. Remember that one first initially. Then trochaic is the reverse of the first one, stressed, unstressed. Then dactylic, the repeat, extension of trochaic, unstressed. Then stressed, two unstressed syllables. Then anapestic is the reversal of dactylic. Two unstressed, stressed. Ambi Break is very easy. I told you it is flanked by two unstressed syllables. So you just remember this. At this point, we have reached something. Just take this into your mind, and also take, just memorize or get used to it, so that we go for a few examples. You have to remember this so that you will understand the examples coming up. Okay, have you? I hope you have some visual memory. So iambic, trochaic, dactylic, anapestic, ambibroic. So remember the pattern. We are going into the examples now. Shall we move on? Take your time. Okay, just take this in. We are moving on. I will give you a few examples so that you will never forget this meter. I'm not doing this for kind of a trick. Okay, this you need not memorize, but get to know. We may not know. So these are other famous meters. Ambi major. Here it is the opposite of ambibroic. Ambibroic, two unstressed syllables. Surrounds one stressed syllable. It is the reverse. One unstressed syllable in the middle, two stressed syllable. Day and night. Generally, conjunctions, prepositions, articles, they do not take stress. So you can remember that. Next one, Korean. It is the only 4. You have 4 syllables here. All the others are either 2 or 3. Here we have 4 syllables. Unstressed. Stressed, unstressed, and stressed. Tired of life. Okay, so just look into it. Next one. These are the variants. Sometimes they may not know what to do with extra syllables. Sometimes we get this odd syllables, 2 unstressed or 2 stressed. One is called a sponte, or one is called a spontic, adjective, and pyric. This you can look at later. So just remember the first 5: iambic, trochaic, dactylic, anapestic, and ambibroic. So we are going into the examples. My God! Before that, so we just looked into measures, 5 major measures, and actually ambibroic is not the major one. First 4 is the major. 4 are the major ones. Here you just remember foot. Foot refers to combination of one stress and stress or unstressed 2 syllables. That is one foot. So if you have only one pair of that is monometer, 2 dimeter, then trimeter, tetra, penta, hexa, hepta, and octa. And even within that, if the feet, 6 feet, is made of iambic feet, then that is Alexandrine. We will talk about that later. And if the 7 feet are iambic, then it is called 14er. Okay, you just remember this. We are going into this. Okay, so how do you find this line has which meter? So that process of finding out the meter is called scansion. The method of analyzing or scanning poetic lines to ascertain their metrical features. So this process is called scansion. Those days, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, university, if you are doing your course at in universities, you have to take a test where you will be given poetic lines from anywhere. You have to find out, like mathematics, you have to find out which meter was used, and if you find out wrong, that's all, you lose mark. So that was the exercise given those days, like linguistics these days. Even now that's coming down. So this is scansion. Okay, example number 1, I have given you the very famous line from Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? We are used to this line quite well. If you are looking for scansion, I told you first rule, remember this, sometimes or most of the times, prepositions, conjunctions, articles, they do not take stress much. Okay, generally nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and adjectives, they take stress. So here you can find if is a conjunction, so that is unstressed. Then winter, win is stressed, ter is unstressed. Then comes stressed, can, again it is an auxiliary verb, that is unstressed. Then spring, I stressed. Then be verb unstressed, far stressed, behind, b is unstressed, hind is stressed. So this is how you mark stressed and unstressed syllables. If you go for scansion. Next, you divide, whether you are able to divide into 2-2 or 3-3, right? Here 2-2. So you have what we had is iambic, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. That is iambic. So the measure is iambic. That we have is very obvious. Then number of feet is 5. You have 5 pairs. 5 pairs, and these 5 pairs technically put 5 feet, and 5 technically put pentameter. So the meter is simple, iambic pentameter. So this is how we find out the meter of a poetic line. Okay, so this is one example. I hope it's clear. I made it very simple. It's not tough, but we go, then you'll understand. Okay, shall we move on? I think this is the essence of the entire class today. Then we will go next. Shall we move on to the next example? Okay, fine. Again from Shelley, Ode to a Skylark. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. I told you there is a melody to it. That melody is because of this arrangement. Again, if you look at it very carefully, our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thought. Our, it's a pronoun, possessive pronoun, so it is unstressed. Then sweetest, sweet is the stressed one. Test, the superlative is unstressed. Then song, stressed. Be verbs are unstressed. Those indicators that should be stressed. Then that tell verb is stressed, off, unstressed, saddest, again sad, main word is stress. The superlative is unstressed. Then thought. First you will go for this marking stressed and unstressed. Then you divide. This time you have 6 pairs. So of course it is iambic, unstressed, stressed, but it has a 6. So if you have 6, and that is hexameter. So the meter is iambic hexameter. So how do you find meter? Yes? Do you have questions? Shall I continue? If you have questions, you can ask in between. No problem at all. Shall I continue?
Please continue.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay, fine. Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is how you find meter. Number 1, you look for the measure, whether it is iambic, trochaic, or dactylic, anapestic, or Ambi Break. Then you look at the pairs, number of pairs, whether it is monometer, dimeter, trimeter, or tetrameter, or pentameter, or hexameter, whatever it is. Then you put together, right? That is iambic hexameter. If it is iambic hexameter, more than one, that is technically put Alexandrian. Okay, so this is example number 2. Again, I have given another example so that you will understand better now. Again from Shelley, the cloud. Like a child from the womb, like a ghost from the tomb. Of course, there is rhythm to it. This time, if you look at it, like article, and you have a kind of a comparison. So to unstressed, then child is a noun, main verb, and it's a main noun. So that is stressed. Then you have a preposition article. Again, you go for unstressed, like a ghost from the tomb. So here we go for 3, 3, 3, 3. So totally you have 4 sets. So if you look at the pattern, it is anapestic. To unstressed followed by stressed. What you have to do, remember that putting all together, iambic, trochaic, don't ever change that order, so that during your exam, if you forget, you can maybe remember that. Iambic, trochaic, dactylic, anapestic, Ambi Break. Remember the order so that you can remember the formula. Unstressed, stressed, stressed, and stressed. Then you extend it. Stressed, unstressed, unstressed. Then you reverse it. Then the last one is easy. Middle you put the stressed, follow covered by unstressed one. You remember that one, and you can remember this. Here it is a 4 feet, so it is tetrameter. This is anapestic tetrameter. Also remember the poetic lines I have given. Maybe who knows, a question may come there. So we stop here for a moment. What we have done is I just took you through some of the famous meters used in English. The most famous is actually Iambic Pentameter. That is very natural to English. So take most of the poems. Most of the poems were written in Iambic Pentameter, or what is called Accentual Syllabic. Okay, number of syllables and the stress and stress count. And I introduced 5 major, I won't say 5, okay, 4 plus 1, 5 major meters, and we saw few examples, all from Shelley's poems. Now we are moving to some technical elements used within this meter. Sometimes when they write, there are a few issues in terms of content as well as poetic. So number 1 is end stopped line. What do you mean by end stopped line? Here the meter stops, at the same time the thought also stops. So it was perfected by Dryden and Pope. Whenever they wrote, it's like a Tirukural, 2 lines and one thought, and the thought should stay within this 2 lines, and the next 2 lines another thought. So within 2 lines they convey one thought. So it was so I won't say mechanical, it's kind of a crafty, very craft. It's full of craft. So this is end stopped line. Within these lines, the thought is conveyed. The thought will not go out of it, and the meter stops here. So this is end stopped line. Okay. Example from Alexander Pope, an essay on criticism. In poets, as a true genius is but rare. True taste as seldom is the critic's share. That's all. The thought is over. A kind of a comparison. That's all. Who is a true poet, and what kind of a critic should share. So Alexander Pope in this work, Essay on Criticism, says, don't bother about criticism made by those who don't write at all. So that's a beautiful piece of advice given to young writers. Do not take criticism from those who do not practice our craft. If someone is not writing literature and giving us a piece of advice, this is how you should write, then don't bother about that piece of advice. So that's a thing told here. So a poet should criticize a poet in the sense, so that you can learn from the real poet. Not everybody can talk, but not everybody can talk sense. So that's from Alexander Pope, an essay on criticism. The next one, this is the reverse of the first one. In the first one, the thought and the meter stops, within 2 lines. It's very crafty. Here it just a run on. The thought jumps from the line to the next line and to the next line. It just goes on and on. Maybe somewhere it has to stop. Look at this line from Keats' Endymion. A beautiful line. That's the opening line of Keats' Endymion. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. So there's a colon. Then the thought is not finished. It is expanded. The loveliness increases. Again, it is expanded. It will never pass into nothingness. Again, it is expanded, but still will keep a bower quiet for us and a sleep full of sweet dreams and health and quiet breathing. So this is where the thought stops. So this is called a run-on line. The thought is not stopped within one line or two line. It jumps from one line to the next line. So this kind of writing is called enjambment, running from one to the next one. Can someone tell me Keats' Endymion? It was dedicated to a boy who committed suicide at a young age. Keats' Endymion was dedicated to a boy whom Wordsworth, Coleridge, Shelley, Byron, Keats, everyone admired because he committed suicide. He was a young talent, but he lived in poverty in London and finally took arsenic and died young. He was also accused of plagiarism in the sense he wrote poems, but he attributed his own poems to an ancient, uh, fictional author. But people found out that actually it was written by him. But he imitated that medieval, 15th century style. So he was considered a real talent, but he was driven to madness and he committed suicide. And that suicide was mourned by many, including Wordsworth. And Coleridge, Shelley, all the romantic poets. And Keats dedicated this poem, Endymion, to that boy. Anyone? Thomas?
Chatterton.
Yes, good. Thomas Chatterton. Thomas Chatterton, Chatterton. Chatterton. Thomas Chatterton. Maybe you can look him up. Who inspired many, and his death was mourned by all the romantic poets. You can also check out Wordsworth's Resolution and Independence. Wordsworth's poem Resolution and Independence. And in that poem, Resolution and Independence, he mentions or makes an reference or allusion to Thomas Chatterton, the young boy. He, Wordsworth mentions the young boy who committed suicide, Thomas Chatterton. But since we touched upon Wordsworth, the Resolution and Independence, can someone tell me in that poem? He was very desolate. He was looking for hope. He was looking for inspiration. And what inspired him, Wordsworth, so that he can write? Someone who was gathering something in that poem.
Leech gatherer.
Yes, a leech gatherer. So the leech gatherer comes in that poem, Resolution and Independence. Remember this because this is an important moment. You can also compare with yesterday's class, kind of an intertextuality. Remember Wordsworth, Resolution and Independence, where he goes for a walk. He is looking for hope. There's a inner turmoil going on, and he looks at a leech gatherer. He's gathering. He's jumping into the mud and gathering leeches, and he's going to sell those leeches to doctors or medical examiners and get money. But he doesn't bother about this. He just it's kind of a profession. It just goes on. Then that hits upon Wordsworth. Why should I be desolate? And let us take life as it is. So he takes and life moves on. And that moment of inspiration, technically called in English, the moment of inspiration for poets, writers. Yesterday we saw James Joyce. In James Joyce, a portrait of the artist as a young man, that particular moment of inspiration or moment of realization that you want to be an artist, at that moment is technically called. That happens to Stephen Dactylic in that work, a portrait of the artist as a young man. Stephen Dactylic looks at a girl playing with a wave on the beach, and that inspires him to be a writer instead of a priest. It's a kind of a manifestation of God. The term comes from, has a religious connotation, but James Joyce gives a literary meaning to that.
Epiphany.
Yes, Epiphany, good. Epiphany, Epiphany. So remember Epiphany. Now you have, so this is how we build memory. So now you think of Epiphany, you think of James Joyce who gave a twist of meaning to that word, a religious meaning to a literary meaning, a moment of realization. And you can also remember Eureka, one who jumped out of his bath naked and walked to the king, solving a famous puzzle. I should have included that puzzle in our first class. Okay. So that Eureka moment, the moment of realization, is Epiphany in technically pulled. Remember James Joyce, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, 1916. with the Stephen Detalis and the Akaras and all the other things. Also remember Wordsworth, resolution and independence, and the leech gather. Here, leech gather is the source of inspiration. And Wordsworth used a different term, spots of time, SPOTS, spots of time. This is the term he gives for epiphany. So James Joyce used the term epiphany. Wordsworth uses the term spots of time. Same meaning is one and the same. An ordinary object that triggers something unique or something extraordinary in your mind. That is epiphany. Okay, we are moving from here to the next one. So we saw run-on lines and end-stop line. Next one is seizure, that means pause. Sometimes when you read poems, there is a pause in between, like WBA, it's Sailing to Byzantium. That is no country for old men. The young, so there's a pause. This is very rare. That's a full stop. Then the next line starts immediately. So that creates a pause. This kind of a pause or a break in a line of poetry is called a seizure. The young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generation at their song. So this kind of a pause in between is called a seizure. Can someone tell me, yesterday we saw No Country for Old Men was also a novel by an American novelist, Cormac
McCarthy.
Cormac McCarthy, and his another famous work, which actually is so famous in No Country for Old Men.
The Road.
The Road, good. Both were made into movies. At least watch the trailer if you have time, or the entire movie. I'm not a good fan of The Road, but No Country for Old Men, initially I didn't like it, but it takes some time to understand that movie too. Yes, No Country for Old Men was also made into a movie. Cormac McCarthy, his another famous work, The Road, which was also a novel. And go and check out this Cormac McCarthy guy. Okay, we are moving. Next one is elision. Elision in the sense the omission of a syllable or a slurring of a syllable. Why? Because we saw this in was this the phase that launched? In the launch, the ED Christopher Marlowe had cut off that E so that it will be 10 syllables instead of 11 syllables. So to make meter, very proper, sometimes people do that. They omit, and there are two types of omission. Number one, within a word, if you cut off a syllable within a word, then that is syncope. Like heaven, see the E is cut off, like launched in Christopher Marlowe's line. So this letter or a syllable within a word is omitted, that is called a syncope. Whereas, two vowels coming together, different words, and if you cut off, then that is more of, I don't know how to spell it, sorry, pronounce it, maybe Synaeresis. Okay, Synaeresis. Okay. The effect, here it becomes the effect. The E is cut off. When we speak fast, we do that. We tend to do that. So that is just for make the syllable count. Okay. So the first process is so famous. Syncope is very famous. You can note, read poems. Okay. These are the elements. So far what we have done, we have seen 5 meters, iambic, trochaic, dactylic, Anapestic and Ambi Break. Then we saw a few examples and the combination of meter. Then we saw a few elements related to meter or metrical movement. Now we are moving to the last part of today's class, stanza. Stanza refers to a group or grouping of poetic lines. Of course, most of them but I have to introduce certain things. So first one is couplet. A couplet is a 2-line stanza. The most famous is one, of course, the Tamil poet Tirukkural, which contains 1330 couplets. So here we have one. It's almost like that, not iambic couplet, which is peculiar to Haiku couplet, which is peculiar to English. So the hand that smites earth unflailing feels the sting. So perish they who nurse their wrath as noble thing. I hope those who know Tamil and those who have read this Tirukkural can remember the meaning as well as the original one. So what is the meaning? Simple. If you strike at the ground, of course your hand will pain. Same thing if you anger, don't nurse it because that will hit you back. So that's the meaning. I certainly can't recall the original Tirukural. The hand that smites. Tarai. Maybe someone can remember this later. Okay, this is couplet, 2-line stanza. Then comes a heroic couplet. It is peculiar to English poetry. One of the commonest, the most common, commonly used poetic, stanza. So it is a decasyllabic couplet. Why decasyllabic? It is made of iambic pentameter, so 10 syllables. So decasyllabic. Again, it is 2 lines, but they rhyme like the previous one. So introduced by Chaucer in The Legend of Good Women. Of course, they are heroic. That's why it was introduced in The Legend of Good Women, and perfected by Dryden and Pope in the 17th century. And the beauty of this is it's like an end-stopped line. The thought should not run out of the 2 lines. It should stay within. Okay, for instance, here from Dryden's Mac Flucknow, which inspired Pope to write his Dunciad, all things are subject to decay, and when fate summons, monarchs must obey. So there is a rhyme at the end: decay, obey. At the same time, the thought is over now. All things are subject decay. That's one thought. Then, and when fate summons, monarchs must obey. Even whoever you are, you have to die. Right? Kind of a theme, carpe diem, a theme. Sorry, not carpe diem. Memento Mori. There is another motif called Memento Mori, like the movie Memento, which inspired Gajini. Memento Mori means the moment of death, that you have to die. So that is another motif along with Carpe Diem. Memento Mori, M-O-R-I, Mori, M-E-M-E-N-T-O, Memento Mori. Okay, so that's a motif here. So that is heroic couplet. Remember, it was introduced by Chaucer, perfected by Dryden and Pope. Then third one is tercet, also called a triplet. That means a 3-line stanza. And there is a technical one called terza rima. What is terza rima? It consists of tercets, interlinked tercets, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And this is the rhyme pattern: A, B, A, B, C, B, C, D, E, and D, E. It goes on and on, right? Because it depends on how many lines a poet writes. It was invented by Dante, the Italian poet known for Divine Comedy. Can someone tell me the divisions in Divine Comedy? Italian poet, very famous. 3, yes.
3.
Okay, good. What's the first one? Purgatory, Inferno, Paradiso. Yes, good. Yes, Inferno, Paradiso, and why I'm reminded of Dan Brown. Dan Brown also wrote Inferno. Yes, there's a Pulp Fiction writer, Dan Brown. He also wrote Inferno. So most of the writers, still it is relevant by Dante. The 3 sections. Check out Divine Comedy in my notes or in the internet. But it was again introduced, introduced into English poetry by Thomas Wyatt. Remember this Thomas Wyatt? I was curious when I was preparing these notes because Thomas Wyatt has contributed so much to English poetry because he was along with Wyatt. I mean, along with the Surrey, he introduced sonnet form into English. And he is the first one to introduce this terza rima, and he will be also introducing a few things later. Okay, and look at this P.B. Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. If you look at West Wind, how many sections, by the way? Anyone checked out earlier? West Wind, Ode to the West Wind. It also has sections. Maybe you can check out later.
I think 5.
5, yes. I think 5 is good. And each section is actually a kind of a sonnet, 14 lines. So you have 5 sections. So it is a combination of 5 sonnets. But pattern is different, not a typical English sonnet structure. It consists of 3, 3, 3, 3, then I think 1. So here, if you look at that pattern, first a need, if you mark it as A, then cloud is B, then bleed and need rhyme. So A, B, A. So that is a rhyme scheme, and it will go on and on. So maybe today you can check out the structure of Ode to the West Wind. You will understand it's actually a sonnet, and it's a terza rima sonnet. Why it is a terza rima? It is a interlinked tercets, 3, 3, 3, 3, and the form 14 lines. So it is called the terza rima sonnet. You can check out today. Next one, we go for quatrain. So what is a quatrain? Quatrain is a 4-line stanza. Generally, quatrains were mostly used in ballads, ballad forms. So here is a famous ballad, Coleridge's A Rime of the Ancient Mariner. So you have 4, water, water everywhere, and all the boats did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. So it goes on, and it not all are quatrains. Sometimes the Coleridge changes. Okay, so this is 4. We are moving to the next one, 5th. Quintain or quintet, that means a 5-line stanza. Shelley, To a Skylark is based on this stanza structure. Okay, so you can see the rhyme scheme here. This is called rhyme scheme based on the end words, gladness, then madness. So that is AA. And no flow. So BB and again now. So now, flow, now. So that is B. So this is how we mark rhyme schemes. Okay, the end rhymes actually. This is called end rhyme. Then 6th one, I do not have an example. So, but technically put, if a stanza has 6 lines, it's called sestet or sestine. Next, we go for number 7. That is 7-line stanza, septet. And like terza rima, we have rhyme royal here. Rhyme royal refers to 7-line stanza, but it should be in iambic pentameter, and it should follow this rhyme scheme. AB, AB, BCC. Take this seriously. Sometimes they may simply give the rhyme scheme and check you out. Okay, again, it was introduced by Chaucer, and it's also called a Chaucerian stanza because he used first time in his Complaint unto Pity. But why it is called royal? Because it was used by James I of Scotland, so it gets that royalty. Or simply put, it's simply a rhyme used by Chaucer. But since it was used by James I of Scotland in his book, The King's Book, so it is called rhyme royal. But anyway, James I of Scotland also was a great follower of Chaucer. So a group of poets are called Scottish Chaucerians. They include James I of Scotland, Robert Henryson, William Dunbar, Gavin Douglas, David Lindsay, and Harry the Minstrel. And in Scotland, they were called Maccabees. That means the makers are poets. Okay, this is just an aside as we discussed yesterday. We are moving to the 8th one. 8th one is octet. And again, like terza rima, and the last one. What is our last one? No, rhyme royal. This is ottava rima, continuation. 8-line stanza. So it was introduced by Aristo in Italy, and I told you before, Thomas White. Thomas White introduced a sonnet. Thomas White introduced terza rima. Thomas White introduced ottava rima into English words. And the most famous one, of course, by Lord Byron. Byron used in his Don Juan, his most famous work. What kind of a hero is he created a type of hero? What kind of hero, Byron?
Byronic.
Yes, it's very obvious. Thank you. Byronic hero. Don Juan was a Byronic hero. What is Byronic hero? One who is world weary, tired of this world, but yet very charismatic. People love him, but there is kind of an evilness in that fellow, not a very innocent fellow. And he travels the world a lot. That kind of a character is called a Byronic, but because Byron lived like that. You should watch certain movies. That is called Mary Shelley. There is a movie called Mary Shelley. You should watch that movie so that you will understand who Byron was. He was actually a womanizer. Yes, he was a talent, but also was a kind of a rich fellow and womanizer and all the other things. Okay. Then W.B. Yeats used this ottava rima in Sailing to Byzantium. See, this is how we go back to lines again and again. So we have been looking at Sailing to Byzantium quite some time now, and again it gets repeated here. So Sailing to Byzantium and Among School Children. Check out Among School Children, the poem by W.B. Yeats. So the 9th one, kind of last one. No, there is one more. So Nonet, it's technically put 9-line stanza, but like you have terza rima, rhyme royal, then ottava rima, you have another technical term called Spenserian stanza made of 9 lines, but we should be very careful. First 8 lines are iambic pentameter. The last line, the 9th line is iambic hexameter. We have already seen what is iambic pentameter or iambic hexameter. I hope hereafter you will not be frightened by these terms. And we also know that is a technique called Alexandrine, because based on Alexander, where they used this rhyme. So people used to prize Alexander using this rhyme. So that's ninth line, Alexandrine. So question may be simply, what is Alexandrine? That is iambic hexameter. Or they can say, what is the last line of Spenserian stanza? Technically called, that is Alexandrine iambic hexameter. Not 6 lines used by Edmund Spenser. Then all these fellows, Byron in Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, Keats in The Eve of Saint Agnes. Remember the number of stanzas, 42 Spenserian stanza. And Shelley in Adonai, sometimes they ask questions. 55 Spenserian stanzas in Adonai, Shelley's elegy on Keats' death. Okay. And can someone tell me if you know, or else I'll tell you. Again, Lord Byron's Childe Harold was a soldier, and he was also a Byronic hero. Can someone tell me? Of course, I revealed the word child here. Child refers to. I just told you. Slip of the tongue, by the way. Child Herald refers to child. Any guess?
Byron himself.
Okay, no. A child here refers to a warrior, a soldier. I revealed it. Okay, child is a warrior or a soldier. The meaning is different now. Okay, so child herald means the soldier herald who is on a pilgrimage. Okay, one who is world weary and tries to roam around the world, adventurous, that kind of rebellious, and also kind of there's some evilness attached, kind of an anti-villain. That is a Byronic hero. And you have 2 examples for Byronic heroes. One is Child Herald, and you have Don Juan. Okay, we move on. Next, this is the last one. So you have quatorze in, that is 14 lines. So you have only one stanza in that type. You have one Jin stanza that is taken from the Russian writer Alexander Pushkin's novel Eugene Onegin, where he uses the stanza. And the stanza was imitated by the Indian writer Vikram Seth in his verse novel. Generally, novels are written in prose, but he wrote the novel in poetry, The Golden Gate. Now there is a series, right? Can someone tell me Vikram Seth's a famous novel? Now it is. Yes?
A suitable boy.
Yes, good, very good. And now
That's
it is, I
great.
think, made into a movie, right? Sorry, web series, The Suitable Boy. You can actually compare The Suitable Boy with Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, both almost the same. They look for a boy, bridegroom for a girl. And that is the theme of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. 5 girls. She has to marry 5 girls. And again here, in this work, The Suitable Boy, a girl has to be married off, and they look for a boy. A typical Indian theme, and with all this caste and love and all the other things. Okay. By the way, don't get confused with literary forms. Someone can ask, sir, then how about sonnet? Sonnet is not a stanza. That is a form. It has 14 lines, but it has its own stanzaic structure, 3 quatrains and a couplet, or you have octave and sestet, right? So that is not a stanza structure. That is a literary form. These are the stanzas. So with this we finish. But don't go away, because I have to introduce one thing today, and I have to make you work. So this is the last slide, but do not go away once I finish with this slide. So this is Carpe Diem. We have already seen it. Carpe Diem is a motif. What is a motif? A theme that comes again and again in a piece of literature and across literature, that is called motif. For instance, here we have, when you have time, use it, make use of it. That is Carpe Diem. That is a very famous theme in literature. I am giving you 2 examples. Number 1, Cavalier poet Robert Hendricks, to the virgins, gather your rosebuds while you may. And that is a kind of sensuality attached to that line. Then the most famous poem, To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvell, the metaphysical poet. Again, he is asking the lady, don't bother about that we are yet to get married. So put your shy away and let be united. That's another theme. So that is Carpe Diem. And when you think of Carpe Diem, seize the day, there is a novel by Saul Bellow, the Canadian writer, a very famous writer in Canada, Saul Bellow. His famous one of his works is Seize the Day. You know, and he's known for, on the cover you can see the Adventures of Augie March. That's also another famous work. Okay, with this we finish today's class. Today's class is more of a technical one based on meter and prosody and everything. But go back to it. Remember the poets who introduced which meter or which pattern, who introduced ottava, rima, or which poem has 54, 55 Spenserian stanzas. That kind of a questions will come. So just go through it again and again. But do not go away. I will just ask you.